The phone buzzed against the kitchen counter at 11:47 p.m., and I knew before I picked it up that my life had just split into a before and an after. Grandpa. Her voice was small, wrapped in static and fear. Grandpa, they told me not to call you. They said you'd be disappointed. I gripped the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles went white. Sweetheart, where are you right now? A long pause. Somewhere behind her, a door buzzed and clanged shut, metal on metal. I'm at the police station, she whispered. And Grandpa, it's about the business. It's about all of it. I think Dad's been lying to you for 3 years. I didn't say anything for a long moment, because I already had a folder in my study that told me she was right. My name is Walter Reyes. I'm 68 years old, and for 34 years I built a commercial refrigeration company, Reyes Cold Chain Solutions, out of a single-use delivery van and a promise to my late wife, Carol, that our family would never again know what it felt like to be poor. By the time I handed the keys to my son, David, 4 years ago, that van had become a company worth $4.2 million, with contracts servicing grocery chains across 3 counties. I kept 30% ownership. I kept a seat on paper as consultant. Mostly, I kept quiet because I trusted my son. David had a wife, Priya, and a daughter, Maya, who was 17 and the only person in that family who still called me just to talk, not to ask for something. David also had a business partner now, a man named Curtis Vance, who I'd met exactly 4 times and liked exactly 0. The company's annual revenue was $6.8 million. My monthly consulting check was $9,000, which I never spent. I let it accumulate because Carol raised me not to trust money I hadn't watched work. That night, Maya's phone call told me 2 things. 1, she was in trouble. 2, whatever trouble she was in, it traced straight back to her father. 3 weeks earlier, I'd shown up at the cold chain offices unannounced, the way I used to when I still ran the place, carrying 2 coffees the way I always had for David. I found him in the glass-walled conference room instead, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, laughing with Curtis over what looked like champagne in company mugs at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Dad, David said, not getting up. Didn't know you were coming by. Curtis didn't even turn around. He just said, loud enough for me to hear, in that lazy, self-satisfied drawl of his, relax, David. Old man doesn't read a balance sheet anymore. He reads the newspaper. David laughed. Actually laughed. I set the coffees down on the reception desk, untouched, and left without a word. I'd built that company sober, careful, and terrified of debt. Watching my son toast to something at 10 in the morning while a stranger mocked me in my own hallway, that wasn't a business decision. That was a door swinging open on something rotten, and I intended to see exactly how far back it went. I still had read-only access to the company's accounting portal, a courtesy nobody had bothered to revoke. I started checking it at night, the way other men my age check sports scores. I found a new vendor, Vance Logistics Partners LLC, billing cold chain $47,000 a month for supply chain optimization consulting. I didn't recognize the name. I didn't recognize the work. I asked David about it over dinner, keeping my voice easy, curious, an old man mildly interested in his old company. Curtis brought his own logistics firm in, David said, cutting his steak. Streamlined our whole Midwest routing. Paid for itself in efficiency gains within a quarter. It's standard practice, Dad, vertical integration. I nodded slowly. Sounds smart. It wasn't smart. Vance Logistics Partners LLC had been registered 11 months ago. Curtis Vance was its sole listed officer. I drove to the address on the incorporation filing myself, on a Saturday, telling Priya I was just getting some air. Vance Logistics Partners operated out of a UPS store mailbox in a strip mall next to a nail salon. $47,000 a month, for 3 months running, wired to a mailbox. I raised it at the next informal family dinner, casual as I could manage, my hands steady around my water glass. Curtis, I was curious about the logistics contract. Optimization consulting. What's the actual deliverable there? Curtis smiled the way men smile when they think they're the smartest person who's ever sat at a table. Predictive routing algorithms, Walter. Real-time freight consolidation modeling. It's proprietary. I'd love to walk you through the regression analysis sometime, but honestly, it gets pretty technical. I'd like that, I said. I do love a regression analysis. He never offered a follow-up meeting. I never expected one. 2 weeks later, I came back to the office to drop off some old files, a lie I'd practiced in the car. I heard them before I saw them, voices carrying from the break room. Walter still thinks Curtis runs some big logistics operation, David was saying, and I heard the smile in his voice. Man thinks a spreadsheet is witchcraft. We could bill him for a moon landing, and he'd nod along. Curtis laughed. Just keep him comfortable and confused. Old guys like that. You give them a little attention, a birthday card. They don't ask real questions. I stood in the hallway with my hand on the wall, and I let myself feel it, the full weight of it, for exactly 10 seconds. Then I put it away, the way I'd learned to put away grief, and I walked out quietly. Maya was the one who cracked it wide open, though she didn't know she was doing it. She'd been helping organize Dad's home office for a school internship credit and found a second set of books on his personal laptop, not the company's official records, but a private ledger. Cash withdrawals matched to dates, a shell account, and her father's text to Curtis. Asterisk, just make sure Dad doesn't get access to the Q3 reconciliation. He'll ask too many questions about the Miami trip. Asterisk. The supply chain optimization, money wasn't consulting fees. It was being laundered out to fund a condo in Miami, one that Curtis and David co-owned, quietly, using company funds neither of them had any legal right to spend. $1.7 million, moved over 3 years, disguised as vendor payments. Maya, 17 and horrified, had confronted her father that same night. David, panicked, had grabbed her phone to delete the evidence. In the scuffle, a neighbor called the police over the shouting, and Maya, shaking, sitting in the back of a patrol car outside her own house, called the one person she trusted. Me. I picked Maya up from the station myself at 1 a.m. I told the officer, truthfully, that this was a family financial matter, not a criminal one. Yet, and I'd be handling it personally. By the time I drove her home, I'd already made my decision. I was not going to storm in as Walter Reyes, founder, 30% owner, a man who still knew every line of a P&L statement by heart. That man would get lawyered up against, stonewalled, iced out. I was going to become someone else. An old man, confused, grateful for attention, slightly hard of hearing when it suited me. I started wearing my reading glasses pushed up on my forehead, squinting at documents I understood perfectly well. I let my voice go a little softer, a little slower, dropped in more come again. And, you'll have to explain that to me like I'm a child. This stuff moves too fast for me now. I let David refill my coffee like I was fragile. I let Curtis explain amortization to me like I hadn't built an 8-figure business from a used van. Internally, I was doing something very different. I was documenting every conversation on a digital recorder in my shirt pocket, the same worn flannel shirt I'd worn to the office for 30 years, which nobody thought twice about. I was requesting, through my lawyer, a formal shareholder audit, framed gently to David as estate planning, in case something happens to me. Of course, Dad, David said, patting my shoulder like I was already halfway gone. Whatever gives you peace of mind. He had no idea I'd never had more clarity in my life. I set the bait 3 weeks later. I told David, in front of Curtis, that I was finally ready to sign over my remaining 30% stake. Full transfer, no conditions, so you boys don't have to deal with an old man's paperwork anymore. I said I wanted to do it properly, at a family dinner, with the transfer documents printed and ready, so everyone could see it was done fair and clean. What David and Curtis didn't know was that the transfer documents I'd had drawn up were real, drafted by my own attorney, but they weren't a transfer of ownership. They were a formal demand for a full forensic audit and a signed authorization releasing 3 years of banking records to my legal team, worded dense enough that a man skimming for his own name and a signature line would miss it entirely if he was in a hurry or arrogant, or both. I also had a small recorder sewn into the lining of a gift I planned to bring that night, and Maya, now fully my ally, wore a second one clipped inside her jacket collar, feeding audio to my phone in real time. The night before, My phone buzzed under the kitchen table as Maya and I ran through the plan one last time. "Grandpa, are you scared?" "No, sweetheart," I said, and meant it. "I've been more scared signing a lease than I am tonight." The dinner was at David's house. Priya's good china out, candles lit, 12 people at the table including Curtis and his wife, a few cousins, old family friends who'd known me since before David could walk. Curtis was in fine form early, holding court about market disruption, about how some people build a business and other people scale it, a not-so-subtle little dig aimed my way that got a few uncomfortable laughs. "To new chapters," Curtis said, raising his wine glass toward me with a smirk. "And to Walter, finally getting out of the way so real growth can happen." I smiled and raised my water glass back. Then David stood, tapping his fork against his glass. "Dad's got something for us tonight." Officially handing over his shares. Big moment. He was already reaching for the folder. "Actually," I said, my voice quiet, "before we sign anything, I think everyone at this table deserves to hear what those shares are really worth, and where 3 years of company money actually went." The room went still. David's hand froze on the folder. "Curtis, would you like to explain Vance Logistics Partners? Or should I? I have the incorporation date. I have the UPS store address. I have $1.7 million in wire transfers labeled Optimization Consulting that funded a condo in Miami with both your names on the deed." Curtis's face drained of color. "Walter, you're confused. That's a legitimate." "I have the recording," I said, still not raising my voice, "of you telling David to keep me comfortable and confused. I have Maya's texts, David, the ones where you told her to delete evidence. The same night you scared a 17-year-old girl into calling the police from your own driveway." I set my phone on the table, screen up, a document already open. The forensic audit authorization, already filed that afternoon with my attorney, already forwarded to the company's outside counsel, and, as of 2 hours ago, to the county's financial crimes unit. "I signed the real papers this morning," I said. "Not the ones you were expecting." Priya had gone white. A cousin's fork clattered against her plate. That was the exact moment headlights swept across the dining room windows. 2 detectives at the door, there for a scheduled interview David and Curtis had, unknowingly, already agreed to weeks earlier through routine business correspondence my attorney had quietly arranged. I picked up the folder David had prepared, the fake transfer papers he'd never actually needed, since he'd assumed I'd sign whatever he put in front of me, and I tore it once, cleanly, down the middle, and set the 2 halves on the table beside his untouched dinner. "That's the last thing of mine you'll ever get without earning it," I said. Nobody at that table said a word as the detectives walked in. Within 6 weeks, the story moved fast, the way these things do once the first domino falls. Curtis Vance was charged with wire fraud and embezzlement, facing restitution of $1.7 million and a plea deal that would very likely include prison time. His wife filed for divorce 11 days after the dinner. David was removed as CEO by unanimous board vote, a board I still, technically, had standing to convene. He avoided criminal charges through a cooperation agreement, but he was barred from any officer role at Cold Chain Solutions for 10 years and personally liable for a 6-figure settlement to the company. The Miami condo was seized and sold at auction. Proceeds went toward restitution. But I made sure the 73 employees of Reyes Cold Chain Solutions, the drivers, the technicians, the woman at the front desk who'd sent Carol flowers the week she passed, never missed a single paycheck through any of it. I personally guaranteed payroll for 4 months while a new, independent CEO was installed, a woman named Renata Ibarra who'd worked her way up from dispatch 15 years earlier. Maya moved in with me and Priya's sister for a while. She testified, calmly and clearly, and I have never in my life been prouder of anyone. It was raining the night David showed up at my door, 11 weeks after the dinner. No umbrella. A duffel bag that looked like it held everything he had left. "Dad," he said, voice cracked open in a way I hadn't heard since he was a boy. "I have nowhere else to go. Please." I stood in the doorway a long moment, the porch light throwing rain shadows across his face. "You had somewhere to go for 34 years, I said quietly. "You chose to burn it down instead. I love you, David. I always will." But love isn't the same as a door staying open forever. I closed the door, gently, and locked it. Priya, Carol's sister, who I'd leaned on more than I ever expected to lean on anyone again since Carol passed, put her hand on my shoulder from the hallway. "You okay?" For the first time in 3 years, I said, "Yes." Here's what I learned. At 68 years old, sitting at my own kitchen table, the people who count on you not paying attention are usually the ones who need watching the closest. Quiet isn't weakness. Sometimes it's just patience with better timing. If someone in your family is underestimating you right now, take note. They'll show you exactly who they are long before you ever have to raise your voice. If this story hit home, tell me in the comments. Would you have confronted them at the dinner table or waited even longer? Like this video if you believe patience beats anger every time, and subscribe to Calm Dad Stories for more.